Okay, we're going to get a bit more analysis now with Camille Le Coz, a senior policy analyst at the think tank Migration Policy Institute. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. Now, you focus more on migration throughout Europe. First of all, what are your thoughts on this new French bill?
I think it's really interesting to see really this objective of the government to show they're in control, that with this idea that they're going to decrease the number of undocumented migrants in France, both with what Arnaud explained, one, this regularization measure for people, undocumented worker who work in sector where we pressingly need workers, and on the other end, with all sorts of measures to increase the number of return of people who don't have legal status in France. And I think we're seeing this, these two ways of decreasing this number. And I think this is a very political objective for the government. And they're also trying, in a way, to please the right, please the left. But as we see, nobody's pleased, and there is a risk that this bill is not adopted.
Kemi, this might be out of your expertise and perhaps just a detail, but I'm really struck by this number about this being the 29th immigration bill since 1980. Why so many?
I think if a government want to show that they're doing something, that they're in control, and that they're going to pass a new law, so that it's going to show that they're trying hard to manage this issue. And I think the problem is, like, every time we have the same kind of debate that in a way miss the big question for migration in our future. And I think here a big question that in a way this law starts to address is the needs of the labor market, especially after the pandemic, when many people, have left this sector that are often underpaid, difficult location and schedules, and also many migrants who've returned home and have not come back. We need this worker for economy. And I think the government is trying a little bit to address this need, but it's still very timid. Because we're seeing how sensitive politically it is, and especially in the French parliament, where, as Arnaud reminded, you either work with the right, you either work with the left. At the moment, also because of the other political debate in France, it's likely that none of these two sides of the political arena are going to want to support this initiative.
Cami, if we broaden it out to Europe, what about this notion of quotas in immigration law? Europe at one point was talking about that, but it never really came to any fruition.
Yeah, the quota idea here, it's not entirely clear what it refers to. There are a few governments in Europe that are using quota as a way to manage labor migration. And it can work in practice, in theory, like it shows the government is in control, is deciding how many people are going to come and what sector. What we've seen, however, in practice is how difficult it is, because it means you need to identify the sector, you need to work with partner country and organize these legal pathways. And so actually, while this is often something that government on the right, refer to as a way to better manage migration, it does not work so well in practice.
Of course, the situation of migrants in Europe also depends where migrants come from. If you're speaking frankly, for example, there was a much more welcoming stance on migrants out of the war in Ukraine. Protected status was activated. There were safe routes and measures were funded. What lessons would you say the EU has learned from that?
Yeah, there are really two ways to look at it. On the one hand, for the first time since 2015, 16, and even longer, European countries have shown they could work together on migration. They adopted, they activated the special measures to give status, legal status, rights to Ukrainian refugee. And this has proved tremendously positive in terms of how quickly, for example, Ukrainian could access the labor market. Does, however, also raise some issue in terms of integration and also housing, which remains an issue for many countries throughout Europe. And so we're seeing this other end, which is government are also saying we're already hosting all these Ukrainians, so we cannot really host refugees from other part of the world, and these other regions are going to have to manage their own refugee population.
Cami, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. Camille Le Coz, a senior policy analyst at Migration Policy Institute. Thank you.